When you say you did ham radio with your dad, how'd you do that together?
I was always kind of interested in radio and in electronics, and so was Dad, and maybe that's why I was interested. I don't remember the details.
Oh, you mean you got your license together?
No, he went up and got his license, and then I said, gee, I want that too. And so he taught me the code, and I had to study the book to get all the other stuff that was necessary. And then he drove me up to Chicago to take the test, and I flunked it. And the reason I flunked it is we were late getting there, and I went into the exam room, and they had started the code machine, and I came in, and they stopped the code machine, and they said, okay, sit down, here's a pencil and pad, take this message, start that again. Well, hell, I was just rushed in there, and I knew the code, but the way I heard it, because I was so anxious and nervous about it, that every time I heard a dot, it was a
dash.
Yeah, what is a single
A
single
vowel?
dot? I.
Oh, I.
Every time I heard a dot, I said, that's an I. And so if you had 3 dots, meaning an S, I would say I got 3 I's.
Oh no!
And it just got that bad. And dashes, the same thing happened to me. 1 dash is a T, so I'd hear something and I'd have TTT.
Oh no!
So it just got horrible. And the guy that took the test from me to evaluate it said, oh boy, I see what's happened to you.
Oh no!
He said, we've had other people do this too. But he says, I can't give you another test.
And how far did you guys have to drive to the test center?
It wasn't that far. We were in Louisville then, and we drove up to Chicago. So that was a couple hundred miles, I guess.
Gosh.
So,
It wasn't a big deal.
how'd you get your license
Then I got back and studied
your
the
father
codes
upset?
more. He gave me more code, and I'd sit down and copy it.
Was he upset that you?
No, not at all.
No.
And I had a friend, or he had a friend, that was going to make a trip to Cincinnati. And they said, would you mind taking Jack along and dropping him off at the Federal Building? He has to take a test. And you're coming back that same day, and he'll be done with that test, within an hour of the time he's done, and you will be ready to go for a couple hours. So that's what happened. This guy drove me up. I went up and took the test, passed it, but instantly and easily, and that was the end of it.
Wow.
At least you got the benefit of seeing what it was like the first time.
Yeah.
What was your dad's call sign or?
Well, at the first time it was W8 MLI, Mommy's Little Indian. And then that was changed to W4 MLI. They changed the districts around. That was both in Louisville. And he used that same call sign in Florida.
Can that call sign ever be used again?
Oh yeah, somebody's got it already, I'm sure.
Oh, really?
I could have gotten it, but I already had a call sign, and I would have had to give it up.
What was your original call sign?
W8 AWL.
I thought you knew the call sign or.
Well, there was the Zigzag Charlie, W8
Well, that was in New
Zigzag
York.
Charlie, and W1FTH. and the two.
I had a lot of calls, like W8 AWL was Louisville, Kentucky at that time, and the war started, and so it didn't get over with, and we weren't allowed during the war to transmit, so it was inactive.
Why? Just because of information?
Oh yeah.
Oh, you couldn't have, just amateurs couldn't talk?
No amateur could transmit.
Did you do it anyway?
No, absolutely not. You'd have gone to jail.
Oh wow.
So the war was over, and I was in Hawaii, already married now by this time, and I went in and got a new license. I was KH6 Charlie Baker, KH6CB, for a year. And I built the transmitter.
How'd you know how to make a transmitter? Or you learned it at school?
Well,
I mean, your father.
Well, he and I built one together before I got my license. I helped him build a transmitter, and so I knew how to do it. I had to know, or I couldn't have passed the exams. So I had to get the parts, and I had a deal where I could get surplus parts from the Air Force, and I used to take transmitters and tear them all apart just for the pieces,
Oh, wow.
and then put all the pieces together in a different configuration.
For a bet.
And I had a very powerful transmitter, really something. And I put an antenna up that wasn't up very high, a thing that was on a rotating radar base, so I could just rotate it and point the antenna anywhere I wanted to. And mostly I pointed it toward the States. I had the strongest signal of any amateur into San Francisco on the 10-meter band.
Wow.
It was just people piled on to tell me how strong my signal was. You know, they could hear it stronger than any other station on the band.
Oh, wow.
And so I got a lot of notoriety out of that. And I met some people in San Bernardino. Most of them, San Francisco was where most of them heard the signal that loud. But this guy down in San Bernardino heard them too. And we became very friendly. As a matter of fact, when we went back to the States, I had bought a car and from a surplus automobile, and I had to tear it all down because it was a mess. You know, I paid $10 for it or something like that.
For the car?
Yeah, it was in a box.
Oh.
And I didn't know what shape it was in. I just had to bid on it. I bid $10 for it, I think. It might have been more, but about not much money. When I unpack it, I find the engine needs to be overhauled. It was a station wagon, and the wood in the station wagon was rotted in some areas. It needed a lot of work. So I took the engine out of the car altogether, and I had never overhauled an engine. But what the hell? I had studied in the Air Force because I was an maintenance aviation specialist. I studied aircraft engines, so I knew a lot about engines. And I took it apart, even though I'd never taken one apart, and put new stuff in and honed it, and everything it was appropriate. Put it back together, and it ran perfect. It was,
wow.
I get 0 time now on this brand new engine.
That's crazy.
And then I sent it up. I had a crew that worked for me, and they offered to paint my car because it needed it. So they took it up to what they call the East Range area there in Hawaii, and all these people up there worked for me. That's where our oxygen generators were located, generating the oxygen for all of the bombers that flew at high altitude, and for the pursuit aircraft too, the fighters who were flying cover over some of these the high level bombers. So we needed a lot of oxygen. So I had the oxygen group up there, but they took my car and went over the whole blooming thing, painted it, filled it with the cracks and the wood, and made it look brand new. And it was beautifully done. It was a color though, rather than wood, you know. But I got the car back and it was great. And I had it back about a month, and I ran over some railing for surface, you know, where they put this steel stuff down for airplanes to land on, landing mats, and it jiggled the car like this as I drove over it. And the damn engine mount broke.
Oh no.
And so the engine was half out of the car. So my East Range people came up and grabbed the car from me, took it down, put all new mounts in it. And thank God they did, because I was going to have the car sent back to the States and drive across the country, which is what I did.
Wow.
But what we did is I put it on a boat, the same boat that I was on, and we picked up the car in San Francisco and drove to San Bernardino to meet these friends that we'd made by amateur radio. And we stayed with them for 1 or 2 nights, and they got back in the car and drove back to Ohio.